But now, what I want to do, just before Chris gets very heavy into Haste. So, any of you eVTOL guys here, or anyone that has just jumped in and has never heard of Rocket Lab, let alone Haste. Haste is the hypersonic accelerator suborbital test electron, and what that is a hypersonic launch vehicle. It travels about what 5 times speed of sound. Um, really, it's high interest when it comes to the Department of Defense. We've seen Kratos yesterday come out and say that the US Department of Defense and the Pentagon want at least one sounding rocket, one hypersonic rocket per week. Chris, how does this tie into Rocket Lab?
Well, like Francisco said earlier, Rocket Lab's not going to get every single one of those launching contracts, but they're going to get a large portion of them, and that's mainly because of the partnership with Kratos and the fact that they have the best hypersonic rocket to date right now. But there's going to be other companies that's going to do. I think there's that original contract had 4 companies total, I believe, including Kratos. So I can't remember the other 2 that's in there, but they're going to get a good piece of the pie. And again, it wasn't a massive, crazy contract, but it's just step one. It's kind of you start off, basic, and you build from there. And there's a lot of potential with future contracts coming from that original contract. That makes sense.
Yeah. And guys, what I've done there, I've just thrown up exactly what Kratos came out and said yesterday. So they said, "Welcome to the newest member of the Mac Testbed 2 team," and it was Rocket Lab. Together, they're building the nationwide coalition accelerating US hypersonic test launches to 1 per week, faster, smarter, and more affordable. Now, we came out when we started doing our series on Haste, before we had our break, that look, the likes of Haste is a lot more profitable than people have originally thought. We said this, we covered it when Kratos, it was wow, a 1.45 billion deal they were sort of looking at with Kratos, and the subcontractor was going to be Rocket Lab. So this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Rocket Lab are more or less in partnership with them to launch 1 per week going forward. Look, I don't believe tomorrow, the next day, they're going to just ramp up to 1 per week. But we can see exactly
what Beck just said in a recent interview. I didn't mean to cut you off, but Beck just said in a recent interview that there's a demand for nearly a launch per day for hypersonics.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Rocket Lab, but the demand is there. That's insane. I mean, it's already there. It's 2025. Again, there's very few companies that have that kind of technology. That's insane to think about. And it's not always going to be Rocket Lab, but it does help that they are ahead of the game when it comes to that aspect of it. Kratos and the other 2 companies outside of Rocket Lab. Let's say that Rocket Lab gets 20% of that contract, and it's all launches. You're going to add maybe 6 to 7 launches for Haste just out of that one contract. That's a minimum of $60 to $1 million. Sorry, yeah. I know I don't do numbers, but that's about roughly what it is. Just one contract, 6 or 7 launches. Again, it's not that crazy. It's not that crazy of a deal when we're looking at the bigger picture, stepping back and looking at what Neutron's going to be able to do. But it's going to be a lot of smaller things like that that's going to build up to something a lot bigger. And I think it goes back to what's really more important is when it comes to gaining those contracts is the heredity. It's them proving they can actually do it. And you look at something like the history of working with a company like Capella Space that was just recently bought out by IonQ. Well, technically now INQ is a client of Rocket Lab.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So not only do you look at the possibilities of a Haste, but now you're looking at the possibilities of, and this is not even to do with the satellite system, but we're looking at advanced satellite systems, possibly used in look at Minari. I know I'm kind of throwing stuff out there right now when my mind's going 1,000 miles a minute because you got me
Yeah,
going.
no, throw it all out there and we'll tie it together for the guys.
Yeah, and hopefully a few you guys in the comments can help me out a little bit here. But as we said earlier, INQ just secured $1 billion contract or funding to build a massive facility in Middle Rivers, Maryland, right down the road from the big Rocket Lab complex that Rocket Lab is leasing from Lockheed. Let me repeat that. They're leasing from Lockheed. Now, who was one of the first investors of Rocket Lab? Lockheed. Who gets the majority of defense contracts from the U.S. government? Lockheed. There's a lot of little dots and a lot, that are spread out, but you start putting these kind of things, you start putting these pieces together. What are the possibilities? What is the potential moving forward? As you said before, Neutron is not the end game. Peter Beck is going to stay 10 steps ahead. He's not just going to sit back and go, oh, once we get Neutron, we're done. We'll launch a few satellites out there and we'll make a few $1 million a year. That's not his goal. We all know that. Peter Beck wants to go beyond Mars. That's what's exciting about this company. It's not just about, yeah, you got to make money, and we're investors. We want to make money, but to him, it's like a big kid in a toy store. He's like, how much of this can I get? How far can I go? That's what's cool about it. So you really do need to think outside the box. What is the potential of a INQ Rocket Lab collaboration, especially when it comes to satellites? And what would be the advantages of that?
I want to kind of jump in there and sort of speak about something Francisco sort of shared there. So, with the likes of IonQ, they would be going after very advanced communications where it'd be encrypted. So, look, the likes of these would not be able to be hacked without it being detected. Then they'd be going after data centers in space. Yeah. Now, sort of follow me along this line. Data centers in space. Yeah. What would be the advantage of a data center in space? Well, these use an awful lot of power. Yeah. And they're very, very, very bad for the environment, for the planet. Yeah. So they're intense when it comes to power, and they're very bad for the planet. So why not get them off the planet? What are New Zealand renowned for? So they're very big on the environment and helping the planet. Yeah. So this would be an ideal deal for the likes of Beck to go after. Then, do you want to sort of tie in how would they get this power though?
I know how they get that power. So all right, so the ISS has solar panels to power the ISS, right? No big deal. Satellites obviously have the same thing. For the next 5 to 10, 15 years, we're going to be putting a lot of companies are going to be on the moon. Lots of companies, lots of things going on outside of just what we were just talking about. So, but what you're saying, power. We're going to need. There's going to be a need above and beyond just your basic solar panels on your satellite to provide power, especially for
it
something
wouldn't be
like
able to
this.
generate enough for a data center.
Exactly. So why not? And it would be possible to have something similar to a Tesla Powerwall, but yet in space. Let's say on, I don't know, a Pioneer spacecraft. That would supply power to something like that and to other things as well, not just that itself. But
So
they're already
basically,
proving
like
that
a solar farm in space where you can supply power back to the services.
it's going to be needed. There's a need for it.
It's true.
Yeah, we're looking forward in the future, but there's going to be a need for it. Now they're already testing this with Varda. Varda is making pharmaceuticals in space and sending them back down to Earth because they're able to do things in zero gravity that they can't really accomplish here on the ground. Well, that's going to be the same thing with if they're already doing pharmaceuticals is basic in comparison to what is needed in space to do the things in space that all these other companies want to do. Energy storage just seems basic. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
But yeah, energy storage just seems like a no-brainer to me.
We have heard Beck speak about space solar power before. It's not something new, and we have the likes of Solero. So, where do you believe the likes of Mynaric would tie into this deal?
Sorry, I'm trying to read Curtis's comment there.
So Curtis says, Minotaur rocket from North will surely get a lot.
Yeah, probably. Northrop Grumman. As a matter of fact, Northrop Grumman is a big. They own the Newport News shipyard, which I'm right next to in Virginia, the second largest shipbuilding company in the world. So that's just neat little tidbit. Thanks, Curtis. I really appreciate that. And you're right. You're 100% right. Then there's going to be a lot of other players getting involved in a lot of this stuff. Rocket Lab's obviously not the only one out there. Northrop being a big name, but not quite as big as Lockheed. I think that's going to be fair to say. But sorry, what was your question again, Liam?
Yeah.
I missed that.
So then where would the acquisition of Mynaric play into this, do you believe?
I wish I understood more about, this is where I kind of slacked off and I ignored the whole Mynaric, everything. I just didn't really think too much about it. I don't understand exactly the whole laser concept. I mean, I see the potential and possibilities, but you're talking to a blue collar guy here. I mean, I have a hard time understanding how a combustible engine doesn't just explode. So when you try and explain lasers to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, pretty rocket, watch it launch. Again, I've never been one to say, hey, take financial advice from Chris. I'm just here to talk about the fun stuff. That I see the potential. I comprehend what other people are saying, but I'm nowhere near smart enough or an expert enough to know what could happen. I mean, in my brain, my little pea brain, I'm thinking, oh, well, we can use lasers to, transport power from power stations back to Earth. That's not real. That's Star Wars stuff. So not the best person to ask about when it comes to that. I know a guy, or two. They're probably in the chats right now. They can give us a lot better information on it.
Guys, again, if you want to call in, it doesn't matter who you are, how big you are in Rocket Lab, jump across onto the YouTube chat and just ask me for the link. I'll throw the link here and you'll be up on screen with us here. Anything Rocket Lab. It doesn't even have to be to do with what we're talking about here today. So we have New Blade, first of all. Hi, everyone. So New Blade is a massive member of our eVTOL community, and I think he's quite interested in learning a lot more about Rocket Lab. So New Blade, welcome here. Call me Curtis. Rocket Lab with Mynaric will be the internet backbone of space, whether an open one or a secure one. And then again,
okay, so hey, Curtis is one that can really break that stuff. Kind of, when it comes to that aspect of it. And I don't know Curtis personally, but he's, he can actually probably walk up to a rocket engine and name the parts of it. So he understands how this stuff is broken down. So yeah, thanks, Curtis. Really appreciate it. Give us more info that you have. Love to have you on sometime, but as far as what you mean by the backbone, yeah, definitely give us more feedback if you can, my friend.
And then we have Bronco fan. Strata launch also featured predominantly on the picture from Kratos. Now I think we're going live here, so we'll jump back to that question after. Can you hear that?
Why does he look so pissed?
What I'm going to do, I'm going to remove it for a second, and then I'm going to present it again. It is very quiet.
As we make a historic announcement about the Golden Dome Missile Defense Shield, that's something we want.
Can you hear that?
And
Yeah.
wanted it many years ago, but they didn't have the technology. But it's something we're going to have. We're going to have it at the highest level. I want to thank Secretary Hegseth, who's been fantastic, and Secretary Rubio and Space Force Vice Chief of Space Operations, General Mike Gutlein. I also want to recognize Senators Dan Sullivan, Kevin Kramer, and Jim Banks, fantastic senators, great talents, great political talents, and people that love our country. In the campaign, I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. And Canada has called us, and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles, even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful. And now we have technology that's even far advanced from that, but including hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles.
Boom, baby, hypersonics. That's
got
what I
it.
wanted to hear.
Year, we will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat.
Damn.
American homeland, and the success rate is very close to 100%, which is incredible when you think of it. You're shooting bullets out of the air. I'm also pleased to report that the one big beautiful bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome. Very talented man, and I'm very honored to have been the one that helped or really created Space Force. Space Force has turned out to be a tremendous success. We were third in space, and now we're number one in space by a lot. It's not even close. And Mike is a 4-star Space Force general, the recipient of the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, one of the most respected people in the world having to do with defense. You know, we have offense and we have defense. I bet he's good at offense too. And he has an unmatched background in missile warning technology and defense procurement. General Gutlein also knows that we need to move fast. No one is more qualified for his job, and everybody, this was a universal acceptance of General Gutlein. Everybody that knows him and knows everybody else, they said there's only one man for the job. So I have a feeling we have the right guy.
He's a Rocket Lab fan, by the way.
Secretary Hegseth and the general.
He's a what?
Please say a few words and describe this.
He's a Rocket Lab fan.
And we appreciate you being here. The press has really been very fair over the last period of a couple of months. I don't know what happened to you. It was so much more exciting the other way, but you've been very, very fair. We have very high poll numbers, the highest we've ever had. And I think we're doing a great job. We had a tremendous trip to the Middle East, as you know. It was a really amazing trip. And now I came home, and this is the one I was really looking forward to this day, because this is very important for the success and even survival of our country. It's a pretty evil world out there. So this is something that goes a long way toward the survival of this great country. And as I said, we'll be discussing Canada. They want to hook in, and they want to see if they can be a part of it and sort of make sense. I guess that's what I was talking about from day one. You know, it just automatically makes sense, and it won't be very difficult to do, but they'll pay their fair share. Thank you very much, everybody. And Pete, go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, add this to the long and growing list of promises made and promises kept. Ultimately, this right here, the Golden Dome for America, is game changer. It's a generational investment in the security of America and Americans. Mr. President, you said we're going to secure our southern border and get 100% operational control after the previous administration allowed an invasion of people into our country. President Reagan 40 years ago cast the vision for it. The technology wasn't there. Now it is, and you're following through to say we will protect the homeland from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear. It's not lost on me, sir, also that you had the vision to start the Space Force. And here we are when the others said we didn't need it, here we are in the Oval Office with one of the leaders of the Space Force in General Gutlein, leading the charge on putting in place a game-changing Golden Dome for America. So, sir, it's an honor to be a part of this bold initiative. We're going to get to work on it. We have been since you signed that executive order on January 27th. We've been fast forward on this. We're here on this day, and this is just one stop in delivering this defense of the homeland, which is something you've charged us with doing, and we'll keep going until it is complete, sir.
Thank you, Pete. Pete's doing a great job, by the way. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, today is a great day for the nation as we double down on protection of the homeland. As you're aware, our adversaries have become very capable and very intent on holding the homeland at risk. While we have been focused on keeping the peace overseas, our adversaries have been quickly modernizing their nuclear forces, building out ballistic missiles capable of hosting multiple warheads, building out hypersonic missiles capable of attacking the United States within an hour and traveling at 6,000 miles an hour, building cruise missiles that can navigate around our radar and our defenses, building submarines that can sneak up on our shores, and worse yet, building space weapons. It is time that we change that equation and start doubling down on the protection of the homeland. Golden Dome is a bold and aggressive approach to hurry up and protect the homeland from our adversaries. We owe it to our children and our children's children to protect them and to afford them a quality of life that we have all grown up enjoying. Golden Dome will afford that. I greatly appreciate your trust in me and your nomination in me and your trust in the team to deliver this. It is a great day for America.
And also, very importantly, it's we're the only ones that have this. We call it super technology. Nobody else has it, and nobody else has really near what we have. So this is a very exciting project. This is something that will, I mean, the general said close to 100% protection. So that's something we need. I think it's a very, and everything's going to be made in the USA, by the way, very importantly. So it's something that I've been looking forward to for a long time. And I just noticed you too, Jim, you're standing there, and behind you is a very important document, Declaration of Independence. And that was in the vault for many decades right under this area. They have vaults with pictures on top. You have Abraham Lincoln. You see, that was the original Abraham Lincoln, the original Washington. And does everybody know who the middle was? General Grant. And so it's very exciting. You look over here, and above Ronald Reagan, you have Thomas Jefferson. It's Monroe from the Monroe document. And you know who that is, right? Andrew Jackson. So we have a lot of very exciting pictures, and on the other side, likewise, some great presidents and great people on many of these, because people were asking about them. Many of them, almost all of them, were in the vaults or nearby, but generally in the vaults downstairs, where we have some great. So it's very exciting. The place has become a little different than you first saw it, Jim, right?
Yes, much
It's a little bit different, it's slightly better. But to think we had them, and some were in the vaults for over 100 years. So it's pretty pretty cool stuff. Everybody knows Jim Banks. He's a great congressman, and now he's a great senator from Indiana. And you might say a few words. Jim.
Well, your legacy with Space Force, Mr. President, is already big, but the Golden Dome is going to be an even bigger legacy for our country. And Indiana is going to help you make it.
Right.
The space satellites that are made in Fort Wayne, Indiana by L3 Harris, all the work done at Crane Navy Base in Southern Indiana is going to be a big part of it. And Hoosiers are very proud of that. We're proud of you. Thank you very much.
It'll be a big factor. Thank you, and good luck, and congratulations. You won that race by a lot. That wasn't even a contest, right?
Well, thank you. Thanks to you and all of your support.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Please go ahead. You missed that. This is Senator Kramer, and he's one of our best. Can't get any better. Go ahead.
Well, you're very nice, Mr. President, and thanks for this. And I remember the day in your first term when you called it. I was a brand new baby freshman senator on the Armed Services Committee and said, you said, I want to have a Space Force. Would you lead the effort on the Senate Armed Services Committee? And I felt so proud thinking that you chose me, only to find out later no one else would do it. But nonetheless, it worked out really well because North Dakota has some great space assets that contribute to that and to Golden Dome. No surprise that you would be the president that would come along and put the homeland first. And this is just one example of that. So thanks for this and for allowing me this opportunity. And by the way, let me just add my strong endorsement of General Goodline's role in leading this. I don't know anybody better, for sure, better equipped to do it than he is.
Everybody said that. That's for sure. Dan Sullivan, Alaska, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your continued leadership on missile defense. We were talking earlier how in 2019 at the Pentagon, you laid out a speech about the Missile Defense Review that had all these principles on missile defense you articulated then during your first term. And now the Golden Dome is all of that. So you're continuing to lead. We really appreciate it. The Congress is stepping up, as you mentioned right now in the budget reconciliation bill, $25 billion for the Golden Dome. In what Senator Kramer and Senator Banks and I and many others, we're working on I briefed you on this before, sir, on our Golden Dome Act, which we think will have in terms of legislation that can help cement what you're doing right here, getting the Congress behind it, not just with the funding, but with authorizations. So we're working closely with Secretary Hegseth, General Gutlein, the whole team. So we're very honored to be here, sir. And, Alaska is the cornerstone of missile defense right now in terms of ground-based missile interceptors, in terms of radar systems and track incoming missiles. So my state is honored to continue to play a critical role in all of this and build on it. And we're really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Great. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. President, you had mentioned at the beginning of your remarks that this was a campaign promise of yours. Have military commanders asked for this system specifically? Because NORAD had said previously that the current system was adequate. So what does this get the United States?
Somebody said the current system is adequate. There really is no current system. We have certain areas of missiles and certain missile defense, but there's no system. We just have some very capable weapons that hopefully we never have to use, but we have some very capable weapons. Now, this is a different league. There's never been anything like this. This is something that's going to be very protective. I think you can rest assured there'll be nothing like this. Nobody else is capable of building it either.
Was it something that military commanders asked you for? Did they ask you to do this?
Well, let me put it differently. I suggested it, and they all said, "We love the idea, sir." It's the way it's got to be, right? But they want it, and they wanted it badly once it was suggested. I don't know if they ever thought they would be lucky enough to have it, but we were able to get it done, and we have all the funding, so pretty much tucked away. I think most people feel it's very important to have. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you first announced this idea, critics said it would be prohibitively expensive, potentially ineffective, and could trigger an arms race in space. What do you say to those critics about that?
Well, they're wrong. It's about as close to perfect as you can have in terms of real production. I told you Canada wants to be a part of it, which be, fairly small expansion, but we'll work with them on pricing. We'll be dealing with them on pricing. They know about it very much. They've asked to be a part of it, actually. They've asked us to be a part of it.
That's Haste.
I think it's something that is great. If you can afford to do it, we can afford to do it. We took in $5.1 trillion in the last 4 days in the Middle East. And when you think about it, this is a tiny fraction of that. But we make it all here. We're going to make it all here. We have, when I will tell you, an adversary told me, a very big adversary told me the most brilliant people in the world are Silicon Valley. He said, we cannot duplicate him. We can't. This was somebody that I won't tell you who it is, but you'd be amazed. We have the most brilliant minds in the world doing this kind of thing. The equipment.
Yep, you're right, Francisco.
But
Responsive space is, you're 100% right.
have their
Look at the gravitics contract.
group of people.
Yeah,
We know
for sure.
all about that.
We can't. So we have things that nobody else can have. You see what we've done helping Israel with that. You probably wouldn't have in Israel. They launched probably 500 missiles altogether, and I think one half of a missile got through, and that was only falling to the ground as scrap metal. It's pretty amazing, and this is in terms of technology far advanced from that system.
Just one follow-up on the adversaries. Have you addressed Russia's ventures in space with a space-based nuclear weapon and told Putin to stop in your conversations with him?
We haven't discussed it, but at the right time we will. Yeah.
Mr. President, with the goal of keeping Americans safe with this, can you talk about the timeline? How long will this take to complete?
We think it's going to be about a little bit less than 3 years, and we'll have a big phase in very early. You know, we're starting immediately with $25 billion. It'll cost about $175 billion completed, but we think in 2.5 to 3 years.
Are you confident that you can get the funding needed from Congress quickly?
It's amazing how easy this one is to fund. You know, some funding is tough and some is easy. When we say we're going to save everyone's lives.
That's interesting. It's a lot less than what was projected as far as the funding. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, sir. 25 billion is a down payment in the budget reconciliation bill right now.
Yeah. So I think
Mr. President, on Russia,
people actually love it.
Mr. President, on Russia, are you worried about the reports on a military buildup along the borders towards Finland and Norway?
No, I don't worry about that at all. They're going to be very safe. Those are two countries that are going to be very safe.
And the secondly, sir, if I may, Volodymyr Zelensky is saying today that he's hoping for you to impose new sanctions on Russia. Are you considering that?
Well, that's going to be my determination. That's going to be nobody else's determination. We'll see how Russia behaves. We see what's going to happen. You know, we have a pretty critical time right now. I had a talk yesterday for 2.5 hours with President Putin, as you know. I also spoke to all of the European, or to many of them, leaders, but they were representing the whole. And I think we had very good conversations yesterday. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. What companies have asked to be involved in building this system, and have you decided on who will be building it?
Yeah, I think I'll let you answer that. You can mention some of yours from Alaska's involved, and Alaska is a big part of it because locationally they're sort of perfect. I think that's your first line of defense.
That's very interesting. Francisco, look, we talked about Alaska a few times because Rocket Lab actually had a launch attempt out of Alaska early on.
Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I live.
It's actually a great location for launch.
Harris. Across the board, we're the top manufacturer.
That's interesting.
By the way, the tariffs have been very good for auto manufacturing.
Wow.
But this is going to be really good for the defense industry in my state. And there's so much money involved here. There are going to be a lot of American.
I need a beer. Let's take a drive.
You're talking about the tariffs. Here's some of the biggest auto plants in the world moving into Indiana, only for one reason, maybe two.
I'm driving to the store. I got to get a beer.
Tariffs, okay. Yes, but the tariffs have driven tremendous business into this country. But you have one of the biggest in the world being
the Honda Civics,
right?
The new Honda Civic made in Indiana. GM has added jobs. Eli Lilly moving pharmaceutical manufacturing from China to the United States, $27 billion. You go on and on with good news in Indiana and across the country because of the tariffs.
Our country was cold as a year ago, and now we have the hottest country in the world. This is the hottest country in the world. Nobody even close. You look at what I made. Respect to our country. We went from being laughed at all over the world, and now we're the hottest country in the world by far. Dan, go ahead, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I think when you look at the system that you've laid out, it's an idea in your executive order of a layered defense. So you have initial ground-based missile interceptors, which are made by some of the big defense companies, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. But the beauty of your vision, Mr. President, is
Lockheed.
layered, it's open architecture, and it goes up into space.
Lockheed.
Some of the new
I wonder where their manufacturing facility is.
that are very interested in it and
Maryland.
defense at a cost that I don't think you said it, Mr. President, is
It's in
unimaginable.
Maryland.
How much lower the cost is. So it's all across the board in terms of companies. Senator Kramer and I just met with a bunch of them last week that are interested in this. And you said it earlier, Mr. President, our technology sector is head and shoulders above any other place in the world. And they're going to be a key part of this. And I think that's why it makes it so exciting.
Mr. President, I think one of the things that's, and you alluded to this, the new autonomous space age defense ecosystem is more about Silicon Valley than it is about big metal, right? And so what's exciting about this is it makes it available to everybody to participate, to compete, big companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, but General Goodline is the perfect person again to sort all that out because he understands how it has to work together ultimately.
And Pete, maybe we'll close with you. We have been discussing this for a long time. Pete and I used to discuss it when I was going to go on a show that he did very well and had tremendous ratings, but all he wanted to talk about was the military. He didn't want to talk about anything else. We used to talk about this. How about you closing it out?
Yes, sir. I mean, like I said, without your vision, willing to say and do things when other people wanted to look away and pretend like the threat didn't exist, or be focused on foreign adventurism, some other threat that we've been told is affecting us. When you looked at the data, sir, from Russia to the Communist Chinese and their capabilities, what they're trying to do to supersede us and threaten us, how do we find the best innovators, the best military leaders, the best companies, tech companies? You mentioned open architecture. That's exactly right. So multiple companies can pour into this, sir. It's a layered defense. So if you miss at one, you catch at the next. And it integrates existing technologies that can speak to each other. So it moves quickly while also investing in further ranging space-based interceptors. So our enemies, our adversaries are going to pay a lot of attention to this, just like they have to President Trump from day one. So you're defending the homeland, defending the American people. It's going to benefit my kids, grandkids, all of ours in this room. So thank you for your leadership. We're going to charge ahead as fast as we can.
Very good. Great job, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Will Elon Musk and Starlink be involved in this? Will Elon Musk be a part of this, Mr. President? Thank you, press.
No cuts. No cuts to that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.
No cuts to that.
Guys, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, press.
Thank you very much.
So, mate, what do you think?
Very interesting. Very interesting. Outside of, maybe Lockheed and a few other obvious companies we probably expect to hear from, I did love the fact that he mentioned hypersonics.
Yeah.
That was huge. That was very huge.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it was one of my major concerns with the relationship. We heard with a question there that Trump didn't answer himself. One of my major concerns was his relationship with Elon Musk and then SpaceX. Would they just hands down get the majority of these deals? But the fact that hypersonics are going to be part of it, it really gets me excited about Haste. We've heard Peter Beck come out and say he is very interested in competing for contracts for the Iron Dome. Another thing I want to address on this as well is Francisco said that the next big electron thing will be responsive space. So Francisco introduced me to a concept called the ACE concept, is it? And what that basically is have no fixed site for responsive missions. So we know the likes of, well, I'm going to mute you for 2 seconds. So we know the likes of the Department of Defense wants very responsive missions to be carried out. So they want the likes of Haste to be able to launch within 24 hours off demand. However, God forbid a war did break out. overnight. You don't want the likes of Wallops Island or Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand to be targeted because they know exactly where they're going to be launching these electron missions from. Now, Francisco sort of introduced me to a concept that what about these movable launch pads? And we've heard Beck talk about these movable launch pads before. So then why don't they put them at sea? We know they're talking about Neutron being able to land on a barge. So it's not something they're completely against. We see the Chinese launch rockets from a ship. Why not use this ACE concept if it's going to be for responsive space? Why not have these movable launch pads that you'd be launching these quick responsive missions from? Why would you want them targeting your main launch complexes? That'd be very, very risky in the event of a war. You have 2 complexes, and that'll be it. What are your thoughts on that, Christopher?
It's not a concept I've never really considered. It makes all the sense in the world. It really does. I mean, obviously, we're already going to use barges for launches, or not launches, but landing pads. Using them for launch pads. I mean, if you take the size of the barge they're going to have for Neutron, it'd easily be big enough to launch an electron off of.
Yeah.
So that's not that's not far fetched at all. That's very, very plausible. Very plausible.
And then they said about Canada there, and they said even the likes of Alaska, and we know that was it Johnny Mack came in and said it that they have plans for an Alaskan launch. Yeah. So Rocket Lab has lots of plans for Alaskan launches, as mentioned. What's that?
Well, we talked about this a few months ago when we were really ramping up the whole Haste thing, and I think it was Johnny that pointed out that, hey, they've already attempted to launch out of Alaska. I didn't even know they had a launch pad, a facility in Alaska. But you look a bit more into it, and you realize there's some definite advantages of having that location, geographically and militarily for sure. Infrastructure is mostly already there. There wouldn't take really a lot to upgrade it, for even a neutron launch. Yeah, and I know that's even that's going to sound a little crazy to some of us, but that's really not far fetched. I mean, yeah, we're going to start off on the East Coast out of Wallops with neutron, but the odds of neutron just being primarily based in Wallops is ridiculous. It is. Having it in multiple locations, and they're pretty well set up in Colorado. Colorado would not be a bad location. I know Colorado doesn't have a lot of infrastructure for it, but as far as current launch infrastructure, but as far as what Rocket Lab has invested in that area, Alaska again, yeah, Canada. We talked about Canada months ago. We talked about as far as Haste branching out and going to different countries. Canada was a no-brainer to us. It was like, all right, it's right across the border, very easy to get there. Infrastructure, no big deal. And Canada's already been investing in their own launch projects, so that's not surprising at all. Canada's that's a no-brainer.
What got me really excited about that whole concept that Francisco introduced me to was the fact that it makes a lot of sense. So war breaks out. Look, they're going to target your launch pad, yeah? Now, we know Beck has said himself that he's not a fan of building new launch complexes unless they have a complete reason why doing it. So unless there's a reason why, like a demand for them to build another launch complex somewhere else, Whereas if say like they built another launch complex in Colorado, but then instead of having 2 targets, they just have 3 targets. Whereas the likes of these, say barges or even ships that they could launch off of, I imagine that the infrastructure is so much cheaper than having a fixed launch complex. Now, I understand that maybe you wouldn't be able to launch the likes of in Neutron off of, just because the amount of fuel and everything you'd be carrying, I'd say it'd be high risk. But I wouldn't see why the likes of a Electron couldn't be launched off quick demand off one of these. And you'd be able to put them in the exact location that's perfect for orbital insertion. You wouldn't really have to worry about weather too much because you'd be able to move your launch pad around. It's a concept that really excites me. And I know, like, if you look at it, the Air Force are big into using this when it comes to the likes of cargo planes. So why wouldn't apply the same concept to your rocket launches? It just makes sense. Guys, if you think I'm jumping down the wrong alley, blame Francisco. No, I'm messing. If you think I'm jumping down the wrong alley, completely come in and shoot me down. But to me, it makes sense. To me, that makes sense. To me, the concept you introduced earlier about IonQ and even the likes of data centers and then having Rocket Lab supply them with power with so-called solar farms, that makes sense to me. Like, why wouldn't they do it? They have the ability to do it. And if you have the ability and the opportunity is there, we know Rocket Lab love opportunity. So why wouldn't they do it? You know, Beck has come out and said it's time to be bold. So why not look for bold statements, bold ideas that we can go for? Instead of just thinking, I think, from my understanding, a lot of Rocket Lab investors are very clued in on, right, what we're going to do. We're going to make a constellation. It's going to be a Starlink-like constellation, and that's what we're going forward. And look, potentially it could be, but I'm just trying to think outside the box. I'm trying to think bigger. You've said yourself, the likes of lunar missions are going to be, in the next 5-10 years, a lot bigger than they are now. And this is what excites me more about some of these lunar missions in comparison to like some Martian missions. We know SpaceX is going to go to Mars. So why not have the likes of your solar farms around the moon be able to supply some of these with the power? We know the solar potential up in space is so much better because there's no atmosphere. So why not go after this? Guys, you're going to think I am completely wild, and you're going to think I am just a headbanger that has come from the eVTOL realm. But I just want to introduce these type of concepts to you. And this is the
No, you're not, bro. You're not crazy. You just been hanging out with me too much. You've been listening to me too much. No, you look. At least in my mind, you're making total sense. And it never hurts to think outside the box. Again, it makes it fun, makes it more interesting. But the thing is about a lot of what you've been saying is that there are a lot of dots to put together, sure, but there's a lot of proof in there that shows that this is all a possible reality. And if and just sit back and ignore it is kind of ignorant, in my opinion.
Well, we introduced the concept in one of our episodes about the reaction wheels, and yes, we've got quite a bit of kickback from it. But this whole reaction wheel thing in Amazon, but if you honestly believe Amazon is the reaction wheel customer, then that really instills in me, why would you then be going for a communication like Constellation if you're supplying Kuiper with exactly more or less what you're going to do? If anything, aren't you helping your competition before you even get up and running yourself? I know you need the revenue, but at the same time, to give them that much of a discount, isn't that just helping the likes of Kuiper get up and running? We know the reaction wheels are a major concept with the attitude of the actual satellite. And we discussed in that episode that the reaction wheels they're going after, these are high precision reaction wheels with a lot less shake on them. These are military style reaction wheels. These aren't just your average cost effective reaction wheel that the likes of a Starlink would use. So
Well, they've already launched, right? Haven't they already launched or attempted to launch recently? I think they already launched, man. I think they've already got a few satellites up in space now.
Yeah.
And if that's maybe I'm wrong, but you know what? If that's the case, then we would know by now if there were Rocket Lab components on those satellites, because I mean, I don't understand.
I don't know why it'd be such a secret.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You got two public companies that would only benefit from advertising something like that. And I hear people saying, "Oh, well, there's secrets and there's reasons why it would benefit them, business wise." I've not been convinced of that. I'm not convinced of that whatsoever. Now, yes, it could be Amazon, but if they have stuff in space now, then at some point that has to be released, because Rocket Lab is the public company, right? They can't just hold back and go, well, we're never going to tell you where this money investment went to and where this revenue came from.
Yeah.
They have to tell us that. So we're going to find out one way or another very soon, because again, I believe they're already up there. But if it's not for Amazon, it's going to be for a government constellation. Not Golden Dome per se. It's going to be something prior to that, because Golden Dome was not thought of or perceived until this contract was already bought and paid for. But yeah, I got to see more proof.
We introduced an idea with these constellation or these reaction wheels and about the constellation. So was it something like 3,000 satellites? They said these reaction wheels were for. But then when it comes to a military or a government style satellite, we then found that these satellites have redundant reaction wheels because there's such a massive payload that if this failed, it'd be so expensive to go up and put another one up there. They have redundant reaction wheels, where if you compare that to Kuiper can pump up they're meant to be the most cost effective. You know, the likes of Amazon, they're trying to constantly cut down costs. So why would they go for one of Rocket Lab's most expensive reaction wheels? And then it just makes sense that this could create something like 1,400 satellites for a government constellation, and then that's the average amount you'd need for a government constellation. It's not a massive constellation in the grand scheme of things. But then, like, what really bangs my head is, why wouldn't, if they have bought the reaction wheels from Rocket Lab and they are these top quality expensive reaction wheels, well, why wouldn't you share that? Why wouldn't you say we're not going for, I don't know, the average Joe cheap Walmart, say, reaction wheel? We're going for the top quality pristine. Why wouldn't Rocket Lab want to announce that it's Amazon? Because I am telling you, if we came out tomorrow and said it's Amazon, this baby's going up. So, like, it just seems like too many benefits to both companies if they announce they're in partnership with each other. And there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of cons behind why would you hide it. But again, guys, you might think we're firing down a completely wrong alley. This is exactly what we want to introduce here at the Haste Club, is different ideas. We want the retail investor to have their say, be able to talk amongst each other without being frightened to say these mad ideas, because you're going to learn a lot about us as people throughout this whole project that we're doing here. We're not all about share the news and then just report on it. I want you to learn about me as a person. I want you to learn about Chris as a person, just to show that we are the average retail investor. I want to show that, look, if we throw enough ideas out there and have all this evidence behind it, eventually we are going to be right. And then it's going to show that you don't always have to follow the herd, as we shall say. I think if Rocket Lab's business, look, we're talking about a rocket company. I just don't think that the average Joe would be able to predict we're going to have Neutron, then we're going to have a SpaceX type constellation where it's just Starlink firing down internet and that's it. I think Peter Beck has a lot more on his mind than just more or less copying a business model from SpaceX. I genuinely think Peter Beck has Rocket Lab as a much, I don't know, multifaceted business than the likes of SpaceX. They're going to be completely different. They are completely different. But I don't think they'll just follow along the back of the likes of Blue Origin and SpaceX. I think they're going to go completely different paths. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, honestly, I just spent the last 15 minutes driving to the store while we were live and went and picked up a six pack. That's what I was just doing. So it's hard for me to.
Yeah, what's the best beer over in the US? What beer
Say
would you
again?
drink? What
Oh, the
beer?
beer. I drink Corona actually, which is it's Corona. I'm a Guinness guy most days too. But
come visit us over here, mate.
I'm actually 50-50 Scotch Irish. My heritage, my last name originally was Obel and not Bell. And my family actually came over during the potato famine. So yeah. I'd love to get over there. I've been to Europe. I haven't been to Ireland yet, but yeah. So for those of you guys that was actually paying attention, I was driving and I took you guys live with me while I drove to the store and missed out on a few things. You know, you got to concentrate while you're driving. But basically, that's what we do. You know, it's more laid back. It's not that serious. I mean, we got to have fun here, man. We really do. I've got to get off here in a few myself, but very interesting day. A lot of new information, a lot of stuff to go over. Love the comments, love the chats. I definitely want you guys getting way more involved, way more involved. And that's what we want to do here. You know, we can talk for hours about Rocket Lab, right? And we're open to doing that. That's not a big deal. But we want to hear from you. In the chat, we want to hear your opinions. I'm going to come up with crazy ideas as often as possible, just because it's fun and it's like Liam, like you said before, you're never going to be right 100% of the time, but the few times you are right, it makes all the difference in the world. It does help coming with some actual facts and some reality behind it, no doubt. I mean, it's not pie in the sky kind of stuff, but it is more laid back. We do have a lot more fun here. So thanks everybody. Really, thanks for everything. Thanks for joining in. This has been a lot of fun today.
Yeah, and guys, like my whole vision of what we want to bring to the Haste Club is, you see there, we have the likes of Chris here giving an awful lot of insight. The contacts he has is absolutely amazing. We like to share the likes of what Francisco and ourselves talk about, the likes of what Johnny Mack and ourselves talk about. But guys, there's nothing stopping any of you from reaching out to us. And look, you video on this or you want us to discuss this on a Haste Club. It could be you want to come on in a Haste Club. Guys, I know eventually I will get it to where my vision is. Ideally, I want it to be where myself and Christopher could be talking here, and next thing we can have the likes of Francisco wants to call in. Francisco has some of his thoughts. Next thing, Olga wants to call in. We have Curtis. Anyone that wants to call in, I'd be so, I don't know. Once I get that side of the project across, I just think this would be very, very exciting. And that's why I don't want it to be a carbon copy of what you guys are used to on the weekend. What the guys do on the weekend is unbelievable. And I don't even want to try and do what they're doing. I don't want to come on here and just report the news because they do an amazing job on that. All we want to do is be able to build on what they talk about. We want to be able to get the retail investor, the average retail investor, onto the channel to speak their thoughts. Where do they see it going? Because you know what? You might unlock an idea in our heads and it might fire us down a completely different rabbit hole. Or it could completely instill exactly what we're thinking. But guys, this is the Haste Club. My name's Liam from the Hustle Brothers. This has been Christopher from Haste Club. And look, we're only getting started. So make sure to bang the subscribe and hit the follow on X.
Thanks, everyone.